Behind his status as one of the most influential songwriters in the history of popular music, John Lennon was, in fact, known as one of the harshest critics of his own work. The world reveres the songs of the Beatles as timeless, cross-generational masterpieces, yet Lennon often viewed them through a far more merciless, even cynical lens. In numerous interviews throughout his life, he did not hesitate to label several Beatles songs as failures, wrong turns, or simply not him. Together with his legendary songwriting partner Paul McCartney, Lennon laid the foundations of modern pop music. Songs such as All You Need Is Love and I Wanna Hold Your Hand not only dominated the charts, but also shaped how the world understood love, youth, and freedom of expression. Ironically, however, Lennon once said that out of the Beatles' vast catalog, only two songs felt truly honest and authentic to him: Help and Strawberry Fields Forever. That statement sounds almost absurd until one begins to understand Lennon's complex personality. For him, emotional honesty was everything. Any song that felt too contrived, too sweet, or too far removed from his inner reality was immediately dismissed as a failure, no matter how deeply it was loved by the public. One of the most famous targets of Lennon's criticism was Obla Di Obla Da. This upbeat McCartney composition, ironically a major hit, was something Lennon openly despised. In his memoir, Here, There, and Everywhere, legendary Beatles engineer Geoff Emerick wrote that Lennon bluntly referred to the song as Paul's granny music shit. To Lennon, it was too lightweight, too theatrical, and utterly disconnected from the turbulence of a generation in upheaval at the end of the 1960s. A similar sentiment was directed at Rocky Raccoon, McCartney's folk western narrative tune.
Rocky Raccoon checked into his room.
Lennon once remarked that he was thankful to God the song wasn't mine. His criticism was not merely about musical quality, but about identity. He felt that songs like these pulled the Beatles away from the artistic honesty he was fighting to preserve. The Lennon-McCartney partnership was one of the most productive and most strained creative relationships in music history. Lennon accused McCartney of unconsciously ruining his songs through excessive studio experimentation. One example he frequently cited was Across the Universe. Lennon loved the song initially, but later felt that the final version had lost the spiritual simplicity he intended. He expressed similar feelings about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Although the song went on to become an icon of the psychedelic era, Lennon believed the production was too busy and lacked the sharpness of his original vision. To modern listeners, such criticism may seem excessive, but for Lennon, any deviation from the original intent amounted to artistic betrayal. Interestingly, Lennon's harshest criticism was often aimed at himself. He once took back Cry Baby Cry, calling it immature. He also openly hated It's Only Love, which he felt had weak lyrics despite a strong melody. This attitude reveals Lennon as both a perfectionist and a deeply fragile individual. He was never entirely comfortable with mass praise, and the greater the Beatles' fame grew, the more severe his self-judgment became. Historically, this coincided with rising psychological pressure, internal band conflicts, and Lennon's search for a personal identity beyond the shadow of the Beatles. Although Lennon considered many Beatles songs to be failures, history tells a different story. The very songs he criticized continue to live on, played repeatedly by new generations, analyzed by scholars, and celebrated by fans worldwide. Lennon's critiques do not diminish the value of these works. Instead, they add a deeply human layer to the myth of a genius. In the end, this may be the paradox of John Lennon, an artist who changed the world with his songs, yet never fully made peace with his own creations. And perhaps it is precisely from that dissatisfaction that the Beatles remain unforgettable, not as a flawless band, but as creative human beings brave enough to be honest, even when that honesty was painful.